Hello YouTube, Mr. Mags here. In the past, I've made two different videos where I've given Pokemon NPC characters full teams of Pokemon. I really enjoyed making those videos, so I thought I would come back today and give even more Pokemon NPCs full teams. So let's start off with the criteria for how I develop these teams. These Pokemon are picked based on ones that I feel fit their theme or personality, as well as any canon Pokemon these characters may have had in the games, anime, manga, etc. Some of these characters do have actual teams you fight, although none of them have full teams of six. I think the highest one capped out at three. Um, so I went with any Pokemon that are on any teams I do have, any Pokemon that they're associated with, Pokemon that I feel just kind of fit their just kind of fit what they do in the game, as well as if they do show up in the anime or manga, I'll take those Pokemon into consideration as well. I'll prioritize a Pokemon from their region of origin. So, for example, if a character first showed up in the Hoenn region, I'll prioritize Pokemon that showed up that are at least in the Hoenn region. If I feel there's a Pokemon that really makes sense for them that's in an earlier or later region, I'll probably make a second team that also would work for them, but I'll prioritize Pokemon that are specifically found in their region of origin. But that being said, I'll pick from the most expansive Pokedex for the region. So for Pokemon that show up in Sinnoh, I'll specifically do the Platinum Dex in Black and White, or sorry, in Unova, Black and White 2, etc. The Pokemon that I'm choosing for these teams will be independent of any canon trainer teams as well as each other. So if a character shows up in Kanto, but I really feel like it makes sense for them to have a Dragonite, I'm not going to say, no, you can't have a Dragonite just because that Pokemon is heavily associated with Lance. All of these trainers are kind of assumed to be post-game fights, so it doesn't really matter as much if they share an ace with a significant trainer since you've already fought that trainer, and I feel like post-game is kind of, more or less fair game when it comes to trainer teams. Um, but also, there might be some Pokemon that show up a couple of times throughout all these lists. Uh, I'm focusing solely on individual trainers. If there is a Pokemon that shows up often, it just happens that that Pokemon shows up. I'm not going to say no, a Pokemon can't show up just because it's on another team in this theoretical list of trainers. And lastly, the team's strength and synergy is not a factor. Some of these teams actually ended up being really good, but some other ones may have some overlapping weaknesses, might just not be the overall strongest, but that doesn't really matter. They aren't supposed to be like super bosses like Steven from Emerald or Red from Heart Gold Soul Silver. They're just, a team of six Pokemon that I feel really fit this character. All right, so let's jump right into the first character that I made a team for. And it's actually a group of trainers. So in nearly every single Pokemon game, when you get to the Elite Four building, right before you get into the Elite Four chambers, there is a character that blocks your path as kind of a final last check, just to make sure the trainer is ready to get in. Mostly kind of for sequence breaking purposes, just in case you happen to skip a badge or do like a walk through walls glitch or something, and it's intended to kind of stop the trainer from getting there before they should. Not every single game has one of these. I know there's not even an Elite Four in Galar, but there is a guy in the Galarian Star Tournament room, and I kind of feel like he could fill that same role. There isn't one in Alola, but more often than not, there is a character like this. I think it will be a lot of fun if it would be, in this theoretical post-game fight, you come back into the Elite Four building and basically have to fight this trainer again as a new final check for the player. That character already knows that you're strong enough to beat the champion, but now, they want to test to make sure you're ready to fight them, the Elite Four, in the rematch teams. So I think that's a lot of fun. So let's jump right into. And I did make, even though there isn't a character like that in every single region, I did go ahead and make nine just for completionist's sake. Starting off with Kanto. Now, a lot of these trainers will have Pokemon that I feel like, even though one of my criteria was I'm not really taking other trainers into account, a lot of these trainers, I did kind of make their teams created specifically to kind of fill holes that other trainers didn't have. Pokemon that I feel should have been on other trainers' teams, or just Pokemon that I felt, if you didn't really know if you didn't really like, you know, if you didn't seek them out, you wouldn't necessarily know they existed, like Pinsir or Electabuzz. I feel those are two Pokemon that easily could have shown up on some significant trainer somewhere, but they're just kind of nowhere, and I think that's kind of a shame. So for Kanto, and we're doing the Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee version of Kanto, and it's a Ace trainer or a Cool trainer, depending on the version of Kanto. Kingler, Hypno, Dodrio, Pinsir, Electabuzz, Kangaskhan. And again, because it's Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, with Mega Kangaskhan. I think Kangaskhan works fine enough as a boss monster, regardless of which version of Kanto. But yeah, I just feel like Mega Kangaskhan just feels like a kind of Pokemon that works very well as a boss character for for this NPC here. And yeah, all of these Pokemon are ones that probably should have been on a major team somewhere. Pinsir is something I easily could have seen happening on a rival team. Electabuzz probably should have been on Lieutenant Surge's team. Hypno definitely should have been on Sabrina's team. And then Dodrio and Kingler also are just two very strong Pokemon that I'm kind of surprised aren't really, you know, anywhere significant. So I think it makes sense for them to go here. Now for Johto, we have this Ace Trainer character here with Granbull, Ursaring, Donphan, Politoed, Skarmory, Ampharos. Ursaring and Donphan are two Pokemon specifically that I think your rival absolutely should have had. Skarmory even could also work there, but those two are ones that it's just very weird that they're both Pokemon that I believe you can only find super late in the game, so the player doesn't even really have incentive to use them since your team has been you know pretty much complete for the vast majority of the game at that point. So by the time you find Ursaring or even Teddy Ursa, you're a fan Don fan, you just don't really have any reason to pick one up because your team is already done. So I think it'd be cool if in this post game fight, this Ace trainer fights you with both of them on the same team, along with Gramble. I also just feel works as like a guard dog for the league. Um, Politoed is one that it's very weird that they gave Poliwhirl this branched evolution and then didn't really do anything with it. Misty in her fight in the Kanto part of the Johto games doesn't use Politoed. As far as I know, there's no other major trainer or even like root trainers that have Politoed. It just seems a little weird. So I think it would work here. Skarmory infamously should have been on Jasmine's team, and it's just not. And then Ampharos is a Pokemon that I think is probably the one that I personally associate the most with Johto. And it is a pretty strong Pokemon that has a pretty significant part of the story, but isn't really on any major trainers. So I think it's not even on Lieutenant Surge's team in Kanto in Gold and Silver. So I think it would make sense as his boss monster. I am very, very proud of this next one here. The Hoenn League guards, plural, in every Hoenn game. For some reason, the guards that do your final check is actually two guards. As far as I know, in every other game was only one, but here it's two. You talk to them and they both split up and you go in. So, because there are two trainers there, I think it'll be very cool if the region that introduced double battles had this double battle as a new final check before you battle the rematch Elite Four. And on top of that, I think it'd be even cooler if they both used version exclusive Pokemon. So one of them has Ludicolo, Seviper, Sableye, or Mega Sableye, depending on the game, and then Shiftry, Zangoose, Mawile, or Mega Mawile, depending on the game. If this were Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, I think Ludicolo and Shiftry would be the ace. They would still have Sableye and Mawile, but because it is, because I'm using the Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire game specifically for this team, I think it'd be cool if they both had a version exclusive Mega Evolution. So yeah, this is definitely one of those where the team synergy isn't the greatest. Ludicolo and Shiftry both definitely prefer to have different weathers up. So Viper and Zangoose canonically hate each other. Although you could do something kind of fun if Zangoose has its ability where being poisoned actually makes it stronger. They could do a thing where Viper on his first turn attacks Zangoose with either toxic or some poison move that has a high chance of poisoning to make Zangoose stronger. I don't know, that could be fun. And then Mega Sableye and Mawile are both just pretty solid. Like their base stat total is actually kind of low for a Mega Pokemon, but I feel like they have the stats and abilities that they have those stats and abilities where it matters. Next up, Sinnoh with this Ace Trainer here. I thought it'd be very cool if this Sinnoh card had all Pokemon that either evolved from Gen 4 Pokemon or are Gen 4 Pokemon that evolved from previous Gen Pokemon. Some of these are used on trainers here and there, but none of them are aces of any of those teams. So I think all of these are fair game here. We have Sudowoodo, Mantine, Chimecho, and then Probopass, Ambipom, Dusknoir as the ace. Dusknoir is one of those that I've always felt like has boss Pokemon material. Um, I think Fantina's Miss Maggie's absolutely makes sense for her. She literally dressed like one and kind of a Drifloon kind of combined. So she didn't have to have Dusknoir as her ace, but um, I just feel like Dusknoir makes sense here. Ambipom very easily could have been a Porygon Z. I really like Porygon Z, and I've used it on a lot of other teams as well. I actually used it at least one other time in this video also. Um, but I don't know. I in this specific scenario, I decided to go with Ambipom. Um, I'm not really like I'm not I'm not too concerned one way or the other, but I just went with Ambipom here. It could easily be Porygon Z as well. Um, and then Probopass is another Pokemon that again evolves from a previous gen Pokemon that, at least in especially in the remakes, would be somewhat difficult to take down with its sturdy ability and just ways to kind of mess you up with Thunder Wave and Iron Defense, Body Press, that kind of thing. Next up, Unova with its veteran character here. He has a Fire Grass Water Core of Darmanitan, Basculin, and Ferrothorn. Three Pokemon that again, it's just I feel a little weird that aren't on any other like major teams in Black and White aside of the one kind of no, actually that was still a Darumaka. Never mind. And then Beheeyem and Mandibuzz. Those are two Pokemon that it is honestly criminal that these two Pokemon are not anywhere in the Elite Four. There is a Psychic and a Dark Elite Four member, and neither of them use Beheeyem or Mandibuzz. Part of the fact is that part of it is that both of them only have four Pokemon. Actually, all the Elite Four members only have four Pokemon. And I theorized before that that's specifically because Chantal literally only has four ghost types to work with total. So unless she had two different Jellicents of different genders, she could only have four Pokemon. So they kind of worked backwards and gave all those Elite Four members only four Pokemon. But I don't think that's a good enough excuse when, you know, they Caitlin absolutely should have used Beheeyem, and Grimsley very easily could have used Mandibuzz. And then Gigalith is one of those other Pokemon, kind of like Dusknoir, that just feels like a boss monster. Uh, I know it's used by some other ace trainers here and there, but for in this instance, I think Gigalith makes the most sense as his boss character. Now, the Kalos one is actually very interesting. Um, Kalos is actually the only instance where a trainer like this actually exists in canon. In Victory Road, at some point during Victory Road, you actually do fight this ace trainer who is kind of intended as a final check for the player before we're able to progress further into Victory Road. And in that team, he used Carbink, Raichu, Kingdra. That team's fine. It's a little weird. There's only one out of three Pokemon that is actually from Kalos, but whatever. That's just kind of how pretty much every team in Kalos is. So I kept those three. I think they're fine enough. I couldn't really think of any other Pokemon from Kalos that weren't really used anywhere else or really I felt fit the vibe this team was going for. So those three Pokemon, and then Trevenant and Pangoro, two more Kalos Pokemon that aren't really used significantly anywhere else. And then I just went with Mega Tyranitar. I knew I wanted him to have a Mega. I wasn't I wasn't really sure which one exactly, but I knew for a fact that I wanted to be a like I wanted to be one that had a presence to it, and I felt like Mega Tyranitar is definitely one that would have that. A Mega Pseudo Legendary would kind of fit this perfectly. Um, Now, in this specific instance, I do think you would have to fight this guy twice, once when you're going through, and the second time, like after you've beaten the champion, if you're going through the victory road again, then he would have this team. I don't think he would just immediately have this team. Maybe he would have Carbink, Raichu, Kingdra, Pangoro, and then the rematch he would upgrade to with Trevenant and Mega Tyranitar, or some other strong Mega. But I don't think he would just have the Mega Evolution out of the gate. Not at least not one as strong as Mega Tyranitar. Maybe Mega Medicham, maybe Heracross, like someone a little weaker. But if this were the post game fight, it would definitely be Mega Tyranitar. Now for Alola, like I said earlier, the one that definitely does not have a character like this, so I just made one up from scratch. I gave him Pyukumuku, Passimian, Minior, Komala, Delmise, Drampa, all kind of underused, but still, pretty solid Pokemon from Alola. Yeah, I just think this is a pretty solid team. However, because I am creating this team completely from scratch, I think it would be fun if I actually also had this one be a double battle with this veteran duo character here. And very similarly to the Hoenn one, have them both use version exclusives. And actually, these would have even better synergy, like actual synergy as opposed to the ones from Owen, where Alola Ninetales and Sandslash. Alola Ninetales can set up the snow, and then Sandslash's Slush Rush ability will make it faster. Passimian and Oranguru. Uh, Oranguru's ability or its move, Instruct, can allow Passimian to basically attack twice per turn. Yeah, that works very well in adult battle. I think Passimian's ability Receiver would give it Oranguru's inner focus, I believe is what they would typically have. If Oranguru fainted before Passimian, Passimian would then get inner focus, which can be useful, be more useful in one gen later when it is now immune to intimidate, but it still isn't a bad ability. And the Turtonator and Drampa, I imagine the Turtonator can set up the sun, and then Drampa can also use fire moves to get boosts from that. So I think could be an overall pretty good group of Pokemon to go up against. Next, Galar. This will be slightly different. I don't think you would have to fight this guy in order to actually do the tournament or whatever. But I think it'd be fun if there's a chance that this guy is a part of the tournament. Usually it's only uh, gym leaders and like a couple of other like rival characters, like that kind of thing. But I think it'd be fun if this guy could also join the party with a Berserker as kind of a reference to the fact that all these Cosmos employees used to work for Chairman Rose. Orbeetle, Barraskewda, just two other Pokemon that I think are just very cool Pokemon from the region. Mr. Rhyme and Sojourner, I think is a fun pairing here. I know they're not actually version exclusives or any kind of counterparts here, but they're both Pokemon that the player character has a statistically likely chance that they won't actually see during normal gameplay. Mr. Rhyme, um, the ice gym leader would use Mr. Mime, and that's only in Shield anyway. And then Leon can have a Mr. Rhyme, but only if you pick a specific starter. So that's an even smaller chance of even seeing anyone in that line during normal gameplay. And then Sojourner is used by the Rock Gym, but again, that's only in Sword. So there's a pretty decent chance that you wouldn't actually get a chance to fight either of these Pokemon, other than this guy can have both on the same team. And then I wanted him to have a Gigantamax Pokemon that is from Galar, and I was kind of bouncing between Orbeetle and Sandaconda, and I just ended up going with Sandaconda. I think they both have very cool Gigantamax forms, and it's very weird that both Orbeetle and Sandaconda are both Galarian Pokemon that have Gmax forms that aren't used anywhere. I don't understand why, but that just means that now Sandaconda is up for grabs. So there you go. And lastly, Paldea. Now, this one's kind of funny. Half of his team is Pokemon that I think genuinely should have been on Gita's team in the first place. But since they're not, they're, up for grabs here. And I think this one would be fun because in a version of Scarlet and Violet where you can have a more typical rematch of the Elite Four members, you would get into the that first room where yeah, Rika gives you that quiz. This time she's just like, yeah, we already know you know everything about Pokemon. So this time your test will just be to fight this guy. And then you go outside and you fight him with this absolutely incredible team. Like this team might genuinely be too good. We have Palafin, which again is absolutely a champion tier Pokemon. Bramblegast, Cyclozar, Mousehold, Rabsca, and an Ace Garganical that can tear it into a rock type. And I like this a lot because Gita actually switches out her Glamora as her ace for King Gambit. Glamora is now, at least in the post DLC final rematch you have with her, Glamora is now in the front of her team where it should have always been, so it can actually make use of its ability to set up toxic spikes. And then King Gambit is in the back of the party where it always should have been, so that now it can actually make use of its ability to gain more power based on how many Pokemon are knocked out. And since the Pokemon that's going to terrestrialize is hard coded to go last, it will always get those Supreme Overlord boosts. I think that King Gambit actually tears into a fighting type for some reason. Not exactly sure why, but regardless, now there's no trainer throughout the entire region, as far as I know, who tears into a rock type. So now this guy can. And like I said, this team may even be a little too good. Cyclozar preferably having its regenerator ability, using its shed tail move to switch into Palafin, who can now come in with his now hero form, completely, be able to just come in undamaged. It can shed tail into Mousehold, who can set up at least one time with Tidy Up to gain an attack and speed boost, along with get rid of any entry hazards. Um, they can go into Brabska, who could then revive one of his other party members for free if you're that far in the fight. Like, and then Bramblegas is honestly like weirdly fast and strong for what it is. So yeah, I think this team just overall makes for a very, very good, good kind of final check before we're able to rematch Elite Four. I think all these are, but this team might honestly be a little too good. Um, I'm very curious what all of your thoughts are about this section of the video specifically. Are there any Pokemon you feel like forgot about? Are there any Pokemon that you think make these teams too good, or are some of them actually too weak? I do think the Gen 4 one was maybe a little on the weaker side. Chimecho and Sudowoodo aren't the strongest, but they're still, I think, I liked the theme I went for with those Pokemon, but I could definitely see that one having an overall better team. So moving on to the next group of trainers here. First off, we have Professor Oak's assistant. And this one I actually had a lot of fun theory crafting. At first, I knew I wanted to have his assistant have a team, but I wasn't sure exactly how to attack it. It's like he's a scientist. Maybe he should have a bunch of Pokemon that other scientist characters have. Maybe like Pokemon that Professor Oak has researched somehow. So, but I eventually landed on something that I am very happy with. I essentially looked at all of the different items and other things that the system gives you in Leaf Green Fire Red, and essentially gave them Pokemon that I thought best represented those items. So starting off, we have Dodrio, who I think best represents the running shoes. Could have also gone with Rapidash, but actually Dodrio weirdly has, I think, 5 or 10 speed, 5 or 10 points faster speed after it got buffed a little bit. So that's interesting. Yeah, I think Dodrio just works well as running shoes here. Electrode representing the flash HM he gives you. Seeking is a little bit of a stretch, but I think a fun little pun here. It's to represent the item finder because he's seeking out items with the item finder, and it's a pun. I understand that, but it's I don't I think that's funny. Um, Chansey representing the Everstone. Chansey is a Pokemon. It can't evolve during a typical any Kanto playthrough, but it still works very well as a Pokemon who was not fully evolved. Um, Happiny has to hold the oval stone in order to evolve, so it's already associated with stones as it is. So yeah, I think Chansey can work here. And then Persian represents the amulet coin. Obviously, Meowth would have worked a little better here, but he wouldn't just have Meowth, he'd have a Persian. And then Porygon, those are the five items that I went off of. Porygon, I think it just worked well as a scientist's ace. Um, if this were a Gen 2 game, it'd be Porygon 2, but for uh, Gen 1 or other Kanto games, Porygon is not the strongest Pokemon, but that's not really the point. The point is that I think Porygon works well as his ace, and also I think it could be kind of fun to theory craft. Oh, maybe this character actually helped to develop the first Porygon. That'd be fun little world building there. Next up, the Shady Salesman. Now, he's kind of colloquially referred to as the Magikarp salesman, but I actually wanted to take that one step further. At one point, this was a more generically, oh, he's like a fisherman. Yeah, it has a bunch of a bunch of water types or Pokemon you can catch by fishing, or it's a team of 5 Magikarp and a Gyarados, or 6 Gyarados, or 6 Magikarp, just that kind of thing. But I want to be a little more creative with this. I basically took the idea of him giving you this worthless Pokemon and extrapolated that into a team of six worthless Pokemon that he theoretically could give you or other trainers. Um, so to better explain that here, here's his team. That's what it looked like in the anime. It's just, I think, kind of funny. Um, Butterfree. I think it'd be very funny if, in theory, he like hypes up this super rare Pokemon that can help you win every fight. No one's ever seen it before. Give me $500 right now, or you'll miss up the opportunity of your life. Not telling you what it is, and you pay him $500, and he gives you a Metapod, and then even Butterfree is not like that good. So yeah, that's definitely taking the whole like Magikarp you know, as a useless Magikarp to its most logical extreme. But I think the rest of these Pokemon represent other aspects of what I feel that Magikarp represents. Not only is Magikarp super weak, it evolves into a super strong Pokemon, just like Alakazam. However, Abra, just like Magikarp, can't learn a single attacking move for the majority of its, unlike Magikarp, it can't learn any attacking moves by level up. at all, whereas Magikarp can at least learn tackle level 15. Abra, you basically have to switch train in order to get it up to a Kadabra before it can finally learn an attack. And then you can't even actually get an Alakazam unless you are train with a friend. So not that Kadabra is bad, but it can't reach its full potential um, unless you interact with someone else. But as an Abra, paying $500 just for a, I guess teleport can be useful, and Abra can be kind of tricky to catch later, but it's definitely not going to help you in the immediate future. Executor is kind of the opposite, actually. Executor is a Pokemon that is objectively amazing. In Generation 1, um, Grass Psychic is actually a really good typing. There's not a lot that can like hurt it super hard. There's not a lot of good bug moves. All ghost moves are actually really only one good one, kind of with Lick, but it's actually immune to ghost. And then there's, I guess, poison is pretty prevalent pretty early on, but it's still a psychic type, and it can, hurt them back. However, at level 5, which is what he would give it to you as, it only knows barrage and hypnosis. Now, if hypnosis hits, that's actually really good. Sleep is pretty broken back in Generation 1, but it only has 60 accuracy. And then while it's asleep, you can only hit it with Barrage, which has 85 accuracy. It's only 15 damage per hit. So you're not really going to be doing a lot of damage with just this Executor until it gets to level, I believe, 28 when it learns Stomp, which is after Magikarp would evolve into Gyarados. I don't even think Executor can learn Body Slam. So you either have to just kind of, just work with what you got until it learns Stomp, or waste your Psychic and Mega Drain TMs on the thing in order to make it kind of useful. See, I really like that idea there. Golem is kind of Golem and actually Crobat are kind of both another aspect of Magikarp where yes, up until that point, you never seen a Magikarp, but you can't even get an older rod yet, I think. Yeah. Um, However, once you get the old rod, they're extremely common. And the same thing here with Geodude and Zubat. Yes, you haven't seen one yet outside of the gym, which is actually kind of works in Geodude's favor here, where he might try to pitch, oh, give me $500 and I'll give you this cool Geodude. You saw the gym leader use a Geodude, now you can have one. It's actually a super rare Pokemon that only he knows how to get, and he gives you a Geodude for $500, and then you take one step into Mount Moon, literally right next door, and you have a pretty high chance of running into a Geodude. Same thing with Zubat. You've never seen a Zubat before, and then Mount Moon is full of them. So you literally wasted $500. I like that a lot. And this one specifically is kind of, I'm pitching it as being a Johto game fight. Like you essentially get back to this Pokemon Center. I believe it still exists, or that same area right outside of Mount Moon in your trek through Kanto in the Johto games, and you fight him. You deny him $500 for whatever Pokemon he's trying to sell you, and then he fights you with this team. So that's why he has Crobat. And then obviously an Ace Gyarados, that just makes sense. Next up, the Teleport Man. This guy right here in the red circle. So in in Gold and Silver and Crystal, it was impossible to fly back to Johto once you've made it to the Indigo Plateau. Would have to make the trek all the way back through, like all the way back through those routes of that cave, all the way back to, you know, back to your hometown just to get back, unless you talk to this teleport man who could then teleport you back home. In Heart Gold and Soul Silver, you can just fly wherever once you've gotten there, so it's not as big of a deal. So there was no need for the teleport man anymore, but he was still around. So I think it'd be fun if in these games he has a purpose and you're actually able to fight him. However, there's not that many Pokemon that can actually learn teleport, at least in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. So I decided to go with something a little more fun. And instead of just going with Pokemon that know teleport now, I'm going with Pokemon that used to be able to learn teleport. Teleport was a TM back in Generation 1, and a bunch of weird Pokemon could learn it. So I'm filling his team with a bunch of weird Pokemon. So Venomoth, Cloyster, Electrode, and Porygon, who evolves into Porygon 2, they're all Pokemon that in Generation 1 could learn teleport for some reason. I don't know why Cloyster can learn teleport. Electrode, like, make in my head, it weirdly makes like almost kind of sense. Maybe, I don't know. Venomoth is basically a psychic type in Generation 1, so they gave it a bunch of psychic moves, including teleport. Uh, yeah, Porygon, kind of in the same weird way that Electrode maybe almost works. Porygon maybe does too. So yeah, those are four Pokemon that used to be able to learn, teleport, and then Zatsu and Alakazam can actually both learn it by level up. Now, Mr. Stone. Um, his team, I actually also had a lot of fun theory crafting. I made his team out of Pokemon that kind of represented the different uh kinds of technology that the Devon Corporation creates. With Relicanth, it's said that the Devon Corporation created all the new Pokeballs that you can see in Hoenn. So the Net Ball, the Dive Ball, the Timer Ball. All three of these are balls that are very good at catching Relicanth. It has a really low catch rate. You can only find it underwater, and it is a water type. So all three of those can be helpful when fighting Relicanth. Kecleon specifically, you have to get the Devon scope in order to even first see Kecleon. So this Mr. Stone's Devon Corporation created that. Masquerain, Surskit is both a water and bug type, which really works with the net ball, but also the nest ball could also be helpful to fight weak Pokemon like Surskit is on those early routes. And then these other Pokemon are just ones that I think fit him well based on context clues and canon Pokemon that he actually has. Exploud, um, this one's fun because it's said in lore that Mr. Stone he either like started and then stopped or actually stopped the construction of Resturf Tunnel because he was afraid of it disturbing the local wildlife there, which is exclusively Whismur. And I think it'd be fun if he came to that conclusion after befriending a Whismur from that cave, so he has an Exploud. Cast form, he has one in the anime, or I'm sorry, in the manga, and I'm like, sure, why not? That's it's like the only Pokemon in canon he has ever actually had, so I went with it. And then Mega Aggron. Um, I wanted this post game fight in the Mega Ruby Alpha Sapphire to have a Mega Pokemon. And I think it only makes sense for him to have a Mega that is also on Steven's team, but obviously Steven would want to use Mega Metagross, so he has Mega Aggron. But I did also create one other team that I thought also worked very well for him. So in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, for some reason, he is the guy that gives you Pidgeot's Mega Stone. But since I think he would want to keep around Mega Aggron, um, he can still use Pidgeot. It's just, he's like, oh, I already have a Mega Pokemon. I don't really need this, so I'm going to give it to you. But he still has Pidgeot around. Omastar and Kabutops are both fossil Pokemon, and in the Devon Corporation building, that's where you revive fossils. But also in his room in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, you see a little picture of an Ammonite there. So that could be cool if he used both of those. Plus, if he had the two Gen 3 fossils and half of his team would just be Steven's team, and I didn't want that much overlap, so I went with a different group of fossils, and I think that's fine. Next up, the Poketch Co president. And very similarly to Mr. Stone, I gave him a team that I felt fully represented all the different things that the Poketch can do. So all the like various apps and like that kind of thing that the Poketch lets you do. So Noctowl represents the clock. Gyarados represents the Magikarp coin flip. Snorlax, there's literally a cooking timer app that uses the Snorlax. I don't really know exactly what it's for, but it's there. For Exploud, there is a Loud Red app that's an alarm clock. Kecleon, there's a Kecleon app that lets you change the color of the Pokédex. And then Togekiss kind of represents a bunch of them, where it represents the friendship checker, since Togepi evolved with friendship, the daycare and the steps counter, since Togepi is pretty famous for hatching from eggs, and uh, you need to walk a bunch in order to hatch it from an egg. So I think it makes sense for Togekiss to be his ace. Although a part of me was like a little weirded out that he has with Explode and Kecleon. Yes, they are used in those apps, but they are definitely not Gen 4 Pokemon. So I was able to make a team full of Pokemon that are in Sinnoh, and I kind of like these picks here. And with Mr. Mime, since in order to get your first Poketch, he has you go around Jubilife collecting these little tickets from a bunch of clowns. So Mr. Mime is a clown. And then Porygon Z, um he runs a technology company, so makes sense that he would have Porygon Z, and it could even kind of be uh very similar to Professor Oak's assistant. It can kind of be theorized that this guy is actually the one who first discovered Porygon Z. Maybe something with the code of the Poketch or something that they were doing at the company created the dubious disc that created Porygon Z. Last up, we have Parrot. She's the one I was talking about before, where she actually does have an in-game team. It's only two or three Pokemon. Um, but I took that little team and extrapolated a little more out of it. And I went with both in-game events that she's tied to, Pokemon that she either has or are associated with, as well as the fact that she is said to be Adaman from Pokemon Legends Arceus. She's her, well, I guess Adaman is her ancestor. And since Adaman is what do they call it? Diamond. The Basically Adamant is like the one that represents the Diamond Clan or whatever they're called from Legends Arceus. I thought it'd be a lot of fun if the other holes I had to fill in her team were specifically Pokemon that are found in Paldea that are also Pokemon Diamond version exclusives. So her team that she actually fights you with is Noctowl and Leafeon. I don't really know exactly why she has those two. I know that Adaman has a Leafeon on his team, and maybe Noctowl is like because it's associated with time, and I'm not really sure. Um, but then she's the one that instigates the Ursaluna side quest. So I think it makes just as much sense for her to catch one as it does the player. So she has Ursaluna. She has a Hisuian Growlithe just with her at all times, so that's her ace. I feel it's pretty obvious. And then the two Diamond exclusives, I went with Skuntank and Rampardos. I think that's a lot of fun. If anyone in the comments has any other ideas for what kind of Pokemon she could have, I would greatly appreciate that. This maybe is like a little bit of a stretch. Maybe I don't think as much as Noctowl necessarily, but it's the best I can come up with. Maybe it should be Pokemon specifically in the Kitakami region, since that's where you first find her. But I don't know. I like the kind of the more lateral thinking I had with giving her diamond exclusives. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Like I said, if you have any thoughts about any of these teams I created, any criticisms, any recommendations, any future NPCs that you would like a similar video made for. I have a couple of others that I was theory crafting but didn't quite come together in order to make this video. So I could very easily make, make more of these kinds of videos. Um, so yeah, please let me know all that down below, as well as any other ideas you have for other videos, whether it be like this or just any other Pokemon related content you want to see going forward. And with that, I will see you all next time.